Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today with us. I hope all of you enjoyed the Cybersecurity Bootcamp for Women. I believe most of you are already certified, and we just have a couple of people finishing the course between today and tomorrow. Let's just wait one more minute because we still have some amazing women joining the call. It's so nice to see all of you here with us. Unfortunately, not everyone will be with us due to the difference of time zones, but you also be able to watch the video in your dashboard. And at the end of the session, would be amazing if we could turn on our cameras to put faces on the names. Uh, yes, we still have some people joining. I hope everyone had a good timing with the course, could really learn more about cybersecurity. Uh, the session you'll be with Paul Dwyer, your head tutor, followed by Q&As with our former student, Anika Bryan. She will give you girls a good insight of her story and her career in cybersecurity and how everything worked for her after the course. So, yes, let's start. I'd like to introduce Paul Sidwire, your head tutor, who will speak a little bit more about cybersecurity and all the opportunities in this industry. Paul, are you there?
Hi, Natalia. How are you? And thank you so much for the
Great.
introduction. Hopefully, you can all hear me clearly. And welcome from a very, 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 very warm Dublin. I think it's like 31 degrees or something for those of you who probably think that's nothing, but it's a huge temperature in Ireland, and we're just simply not used to it. So we're struggling with the heat. So I'm going to do my best to get through this session, and I'll expedite it as quickly as possible so that we get onto the interesting piece around the Q&A, and we can get some feedback, and we can talk to you guys as well and answer any queries you may have as well. So look, let me start off by introducing myself a little bit. I've had a career in the cybersecurity industry for over 30 years now. Started with a technical background, and I developed into all the various areas of discipline. And it is a holistic area: cybersecurity, risk, privacy, all interrelated under an umbrella. And I've had that career all around the world, working with law enforcement, working with military, working with global corporations, and so on. And I head up an organization, as you know, known as ICTTF. It's a not for profit initiative. And the initiative is to get all the good guys working together, to get all the like-minded people, because the success of the bad actors, the bad guys, is because they collaborate, they help each other, they share information, they teach each other. So we form this community as a way of fighting back against that by able to sharing all the good tips, all the good techniques, all the good lessons that can be used in order to defeat the bad guys and what we often refer to, as I'm sure you're well aware now, as cyber evil within that. And then commercially, I head up an organization known as Cyber Risk International, and I'm CEO of Cyber Risk International. We've developed a piece of technology known as Cyber Prism to help organizations around the world deal with cyber threats and cyber risks and manage them. So you may be interested in that, and by all means, just visit the website and you can find out more about that. So look, I'm going to kick in, guys, and talk to you. Let's put things back into context a little bit. And when we started off on a journey about cybersecurity bootcamp for women, we talked about that whole thing of living in two worlds. We talked about the fact that we have no choice but to exist in both of those worlds. We have the real physical world and we have the cyber world. And in the real physical world, there are laws, there's social norms, there's consequences. So if somebody wants to carry out a bad act, if they want to carry out a crime, there's a risk associated with that. And there's certain conditions that have to be in play for them to be able to do that. So, for example, if somebody wanted to steal money from a bank, they even have to take into account the weight of the money that they're going to carry away, because money weighs an awful lot, believe it or not. And They have to calculate all those kind of things in. They would have to work out how are they going to get access, physical access to the money. How are they going to get away without being identified on CCTV? Witnesses, will they get shot? Will there be armed guards? Will they be identified afterwards? And then that asset, that money, if it's stolen, no doubt it's been the risk has been transferred from the bank that it's insured, so the risk itself is transferred. So it's all very, very different. However, in the cyber world, the bad actor who wants to steal your asset, who wants to steal your data, may steal it from anywhere in the world with almost impunity. They don't have to have physical access. They simply just need to be able to access over the internet the capability of either taking your data or kidnapping your data in the event of something like ransomware, where they kidnap your data from you. It's still there in front of you, but you can't use it. It's been kidnapped from you. And they will demand ransom payments and so on. And so there's lots of different variants of threats. And the chances are that they won't face what we call attribution. They won't face an investigation. Law enforcement won't take them to court. They won't be sentenced. And they can almost operate with impunity because of this often collusion between nation states and bad actors, where they will harbor these bad actors. So, for example, we've talked about Russia in the past, and we've talked about how a lot of cyber criminals will operate out of Russia, but they also operate out of other areas. For example, they may be part of military units like Unit 61398 of the People's Liberation Army in China. But there's not just those two areas. There's areas all over the world where these actors may be working on behalf of a nation state or colluding, supported by those nation states. So we have a big challenge to deal with that. And we looked at that when we looked at this infographic. And again, to remind you guys in this infographic that this isn't all the cyber threat actors. These are the main ones. For example, pedophiles, cyber scum, as I often refer to them, and I speak quite bluntly about this kind of stuff because there's lots of sub-actor groups within this, and lots that overlap between these areas as well. So they don't operate necessarily neat little silos, neat little wedges of this pie, or if you'd like to think of this maybe as a Venn diagram, there's an overlap between all of these because they may have different objectives. For example, cyber criminals want to make money. Nation states may be doing it for economic advantage. You may have hacktivists that are doing it for ideological reasons. Terrorists may do it for ideological reasons. They may do it in order to groom lone wolf terrorist cells, to raise money, to carry out physical terrorist activities, to develop a cyber caliphate. It could be anything, but all of these kind of groups are all working in this underground ecosystem of cyber criminality, and they all help and support each other within that. So if they're trying to transfer information or money in a secure way, they'll use the same kind of techniques. So terrorists will use the same kind of techniques that criminals do when they're trying to send money or information over to a third party. And we'll see this with the use of the very systems that they'll use, rent, hire, and so on. And we talked about in relation to crime as a service. So, guys, this leads me nicely into the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is something that we're all dealing with, or have been anywhere for the last year and a half or so, which is COVID. And and I think COVID is a great example to demonstrate a number of salient points. And those points are we're all interconnected, we're all interdependent, that's very true when it comes to cyber threats and cyber risk. And what one person does to protect or safeguard them has an impact on everybody else. And it's very, very similar with cyber. If one organization raises their game around cybersecurity and cyber risk management, they're protecting people within their supply chain, up and downstream in the supply chain. They're protecting their customers. There's a knock-on positive effect to doing cybersecurity properly, what we often refer to as cyber hygiene, the basic levels of cybersecurity controls being in place. And by having good cyber hygiene in place, you're making the ecosystem that we all depend on, i.e., the internet, the digital economy, you're making it much safer for everybody to operate within there. And you're making it more difficult for the cyber threat actors to gain advantage of children, individuals, businesses large and small, even countries at this stage where we see even critical national infrastructure being ubiquitously attacked and held to ransom. So let's look at this a little bit deeper in relation to COVID itself. When we look at this, COVID has caused chaos in the global economy. It has disrupted the supply chains. And I was on a briefing recently where we were talking about this, even in relation to how it's changed the modus operandi of the cyber threat actors, where they may have been laundering women for the sex trade, and then they've used them those victims to become part of mules in relation to illicit drugs, or illicit trafficking of other kinds, because they've adapted. Because this is something you need to understand, that um, cyber criminals, cyber bad guys are entrepreneurs, they're innovators, and they're opportunists. And COVID has been a massive, massive opportunity for these bad guys to take advantage of the disruption, the chaos that's been caused. And it's transformed society, how we operate. Wearing masks, washing hands, all that kind of stuff, sanitizing before entering premises, all those kind of things. It's just disrupted the way we have our meetings, where we're meeting online, and not so much in the physical world and face to face. And they've taken advantage of all of these things. They see all of these things as an opportunity. And it's accelerated the business model transformation. So, for example, when COVID happened first, a lot of people skipped. To be honest, they skipped policy. They embraced what we often refer to as shadow IT. Shadow IT is that phrase used to describe operating outside of agreed policies and procedures. Now, to keep the ship afloat, to keep the show on the road, a lot of people would set up their office workers remotely, their supply chains, their customers. They let them access systems remotely, and so on. They changed the architecture of what they were doing, and this was all done in an accelerated model. We even saw large organizations who took their security departments away from security work and said, "No, you work on IT stuff. We need you to run out all of these systems." Now, all the bad guys just went, "Whoa, this is fantastic. We've got a great opportunity here now, because there's chaos, there's weakness, there's disruption, there's complexity, there's all of those kind of things that we can use to our advantage." And this affected what we call the inherent cyber risk level of an organization, large or small. The inherent cyber risk level of an organization is that inherent risk level that you have, a metric associated with that. It could be 1 to 10, it could be 1 to 5, it could be 1 to 1,000. It's where you sit on that risk level based on how many staff you have, what countries you operate from, what kind of technology you use, how much data do you hold, how much PII data, personally identifiable data, that you hold, how many transactions you perform online, are you a clearinghouse of money, all those kind of things. That's your cyber DNA, how you're using systems, how you're using data, how big a target are you, how vulnerable you are, how complex you are, how many legacy systems you have. All of those kind of things, guys, put together becomes a metric, a level of risk you have in relation to cyber. Okay. Now, we're all operating differently than we did pre COVID. So that means that our level has changed. Maybe it's come down a little bit. I doubt it very much. In most cases, that risk level has gone up, because now you're dependent on the internet more. Maybe home workers operating from home who are operating in shared environments. They may share their home with other people. They may be on a residential internet gateway. It was simply just may not be as secure as the way the office was in relation to firewalls, routers, vulnerability detection, network behavior anomaly detection, all those kind of controls that we've been placing in an office environment. And of course, what we've seen is this increased reliance on the digital economy. COVID it has many, dare I say, positive aspects that it's brought in relation to technology and people embracing technology. Because we can look at this and go, oh, it's all about risk and it's all about danger, but it's also about opportunity. It's also about creating things. It's also about being able to create new business models, being able to transform how people operate in a much better way. So we've had this increased reliance on the internet. We've had a massive increase on cyber threat actor activity. Let me throw some statistics at you: 600%, 700%, 800%. This is what's been thrown around by Interpol, Europol, the FBI, agencies that are monitoring this as best they can, and said, since COVID, that's the increase. We've even heard from the World Health Organization saying that there's been massive increase on COVID related scams. Again, how terrible is this to hold the health service of an entire country to ransom? And that's what they've done in Ireland. They don't care if there's children dying of cancer and they can't get the treatments. They don't care if they've disrupted the COVID vaccine campaign or whatever it happens to be, because these people are essentially evil and they have an objective. They want to make money, or they want to carry out whatever their campaign is, their objective, whether it's ideologically based or it's greed, whatever it happens to be, and they want to carry out these things, and they will do that. They will spot this opportunity and they will carry it out accordingly. So there's been acceleration. Years have become essentially months, weeks, whatever way you want to look at that. Because what we've seen is, whereas beforehand we may have had a time to catch our breath, dare I say, to roll out projects in a normal way, to assess the security, the governance, the risk, the privacy controls around those things as they were being designed, implemented, tested, rolled out through the whole SDLC, the whole system development lifecycle. We haven't been able to do that through COVID. It's simply get it running, get it up and going, and there's been a lot of that going on. So we also have had effectively the new rules are there are no rules. And that's essentially the new rule, because everybody's been just told to, well, you got to get it working. So what I would suggest is now beyond the time and the line where that kind of, I won't say it's reckless activity, but it was activity that was carried out was understandable, maybe even forgivable. But for organizations now, they have to take stock of what's happened. Is they have now a lot of extra risk, cyber related risk, that they need to deal with. That's why we need more people in the cybersecurity industry. It's why it's shameful that less than 10% of the cybersecurity industry is made up of women. It's terrible. There's over 4 million cybersecurity open jobs there, and salaries now into the millions per year, because the demand is so strong to get people into the industry. So there's an increased pressure on the supply chain, the digital architecture. So it's from all areas, guys. It could be down in the technical area, designing the architecture of networks and how to make those more secure. It could be right up to compliance. It could be around money laundering. It could be around procurement. It could be around governance, risk, all of those areas. The legal side, so many different areas make up this holistic world. And I'll talk about that towards the end of this brief presentation, this whole holistic area of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity isn't firewalls. That's just one tiny little aspect. Cybersecurity isn't just about patching systems and so on. It's about people, processes, technology. It's about all of this stuff put together. And that's why it's such an exciting industry to become part of. And guys, there's been a psychological impact on humans. They've been distressed, discombobulated, and distracted. They've been working from home. They may have their children there. They may have the dog. They may be going crazy with people around them, and they're trying to work. They may have very sensitive data. We saw recent statistics saying that over 90% of home workers now had access to highly sensitive data. Do they have a shredder? Do they have a lockable filing cabinet? Even the physical aspect of having these printouts and this data and so on. And you can imagine all of what that has brought. And all of this change has brought opportunity, not just for the bad guys, but for the good guys, because there's opportunity there for you to work and defeat all of this by working within the cybersecurity industry itself. And we often refer to this as the C-19 or COVID-19 cyberstorm. All of these different things coming together at one time means that there's going to be this synergy, if you like, in one way, that all of these things are going to be greater than the sum of their parts, because it's made the risk go way up. The opportunity is going up. Lots of businesses are thriving. They've developed new digital innovation, digital transformation models that have just been fantastic. And they're looking for people to help them wrap all of that and support all that with good cyber risk management, good cybersecurity, good privacy controls, all of those things. Because otherwise it's just an idea, and they need to run it out in a way that will stand up to scrutiny. So the most effective digital transformation office in the world has been COVID. In my 30-year career, I've never seen anything that has accelerated the amount of technology that's being implemented. Forget about the dot-com boom, forget about even the millennium bug, all of those things, if they mean anything to what I'm talking about, depending on your right, you will know what they weren't. And they were all sort of catalysts, but this has been catalyst for change. This has been catalyst for online businesses. And all of those things on the positive have also brought up the risk side on this, and we have to be able to deal with that. And that's why we need more people who are cyber risk officers, more people who are going to be able to deal with this within organizations. And we often refer to this as a black swan event. That's to say, something that we thought maybe would never happen or didn't exist, and then it actually becomes quite common. And things like massive ransomware attacks are now black swan events. Things like COVID and different variants of COVID coming out all the time. It's a black swan event. These are high risk events that we thought and hoped would never happen, but they're going to happen. The entire health system, as I've mentioned, of a country being brought to its knees and still struggling, and costing maybe 1 billion or more to recover from a ransomware attack. I mean, that's the world we live in now, guys. When some of even the most profitable companies in the world, oil and gas and so on, are being targeted and having to pay out because they weren't prepared to deal with some of these issues as well. So We often talk about the new normal and as if it's something that's ahead or someday we'll all wake up and this COVID piece will be gone and this COVID nightmare will be gone. But the reality is today is the new normal and tomorrow's another new normal and the day after that's another normal because we're all developing, we're evolving with this, we're evolving our business models, we're evolving our skills, how we work, how we operate, how we communicate, how we deal with people, and so on. It's all evolving. So we're in the new normal, and we can't wait for something to happen. It's not going to be like a D-Day, and then oh, it's all going to be okay after that. We have to be able to deal with that, especially from a cyber risk point of view. Now we look at this within the media, guys, and I've already mentioned all of these kind of law enforcement agencies around the world, from Interpol, even the World Health Organization, EC3, that all talked about this. And it's almost to the stage sometimes I think that do businesses get a little bit desensitized or think, oh, it'll never happen to me. And then all of a sudden happens to someone in their sector or even happens to them. And then it becomes a reality. Sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between this cybersecurity world and these threat actors and what people think will really happen in the real world. The two worlds are totally interconnected, guys. Cyber threats are happening every day, whether it's people trying to groom children online, whether it's people trying to scam your grandparents, whether it's people trying to rob money from a bank, whether it's people trying to steal data from you, whether it's people trying to blackmail you. All of these kind of things are happening all the time. I saw a recent statistic there, even in relation to ransomware in the United States, that the recent statistics showing that every 11 minutes a company becomes a victim of ransomware. It's crazy, and you can imagine what that is on a worldwide basis. So this is something we need to deal with. Now, pre-COVID, somebody I'm a big fan of is Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank. Very, very smart lady. And she came out just before COVID, and she warned the world that a cyber attack on any part of the financial sector could cause a liquidity crisis because of the fact that it's so interconnected and it's interdependent. And that is why you will always see the financial sector itself become very aware of this from the G7 and the guidance that came from the cyber fundamentals, from local regulators all around the world, whether it's the Central Bank of Ireland here in Ireland where I'm based, or whether it's regulators in your part of the world. They're all banging the same drum and saying the financial sector is still one of the biggest targets in the world, and we have to make sure that large and small, all the entities and all of the links in the chain are all secure, because you're only as secure as the weakest link. So we can see here from her comments that she has warned about this liquidity crisis, and it's something very real. And of course, since then we've had COVID, and since then this is even more of an imperative for people to realize and people to deal with. And it's something I have talked about as well from the point of view that I believe that we've seen, yes, these what we talk about is dwell time, guys. What we talk about is when the bad guys get on your network and they sit there until you realize that they're, or until they carry out their actions, is known as the dwell time. And that dwell time may be a week, a month, years. We've seen it for years in some cases. And what the bad guys have been doing effectively is they've been using this opportunity of COVID to make their way through supply chains, make their way through remote office worker homes, all of those things. And they're in a dwell time phase where they're working out what's the best way I can work in a parasitic way to steal and take data or money from this organization. And they're taking data, they're researching, and they're working out all of these things. So we are going to see, without a doubt, we are going to see major attacks and impacts. Lots of attacks happen every day in the financial sector. We're going to see lots of impact from these kind of things as well, because of the kind of issues I've talked about already. Now, guys, I always talk about this cybersecurity and cyber risk, and people say, well, whose responsibility? Is it the head of IT security? Is it the head of networks? Is it our CISO or Chief Information Security Officer? Who's responsible? Well, the board are accountable and the CEO is responsible within an organization. And of course, they will delegate and have people and teams to do that. But I've already mentioned that it takes people, it takes processes, and it takes technology. So it takes every little part of an organization. We looked at the business value chain. We looked at all the parts that make up your business itself. And the reality is when it comes to COVID, we're all responsible. We all have to wash our hands. We all have to wear face masks. We all have to follow the guidelines. And we're all aware of that. And when it comes to, if you remember things like airports, and you remember going into an airport and seeing things like an unattended bag, your gut instinct was something was wrong. And you would take responsibility, even though you don't work for the airport. You may go up and say to somebody in security, hey, there's a bag over there. It's unattended. We need to do something about that. And that's a safety feature of everybody knowing that we have a community of responsibility. And we have the same thing when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber risk. We all have to take responsibility. If you work in a company and there's 100 people, that's 100 people that can protect your organization, as opposed to 100 people that will put it at risk or may be vulnerable and may become a weakness within that company. And that's why education is so, so important. We all have to play a part, whatever a role is within the organization. And that's the role of leadership. They need to set the tone, set the policy, and policy leads to behavior, and behavior leads to culture. And it has to be driven from the top. And that's why we have developed so much of this training material around business leaders and being able to empower business leaders that they not necessarily want to become technical cybersecurity experts, but they want to understand what are the legal aspects, compliance, the business drivers, how they can handle all of this and pull this together to protect their businesses. And even more importantly from that is to be able to empower their businesses into delivering their business model and delivering their ambitions of what that business is. And I've mentioned policy. I don't want to fly over that. I know we're tight in time today, guys. But policy isn't about like putting together documents and filing them up on a shared drive and forget about them and going, oh, there we go. That's all good. Policy is something that needs to become part of everybody's behavior, because policies are essentially the laws of internal laws of how you run and how you do things within your business. And there needs to be the right kinds of policies, the right kinds of policies that aren't too draconian. They have to be set with a proportionality principle that they will fit the culture and fit the business, because they're going to impact that culture. And if somebody needs to share data in a certain way, there can't be policy to say they can't, because if the business need is there, then there needs to be a policy that allows them to facilitate them to do that in a risk managed way. And that's where this art of risk management and cyber risk management comes together within those pieces. And you want to develop loyalty within the companies you work for. And loyalty is beyond compliance. Loyalty to your fellow human is spotting an unattended bag in an airport and raising your hand and doing something about it. Loyalty within your business is going beyond just doing the compliance training and saying, yeah, I know not to click on links. I know not to do this. I know not to do that. That's just compliance training, guys. And that's minimum baseline stuff. And it's necessary and it has to be done. But really what you want to be about is caring and being loyal and wanting to protect that business, especially when people effectively, when we're back in the office and you go home and people go into, their personal life and the personal mode, they're still targets. People know they work in, let's say, a bank. They see it on LinkedIn. They're going to then find their social profile. They're going to try and get onto their social networking profile, befriend them on Facebook, whatever it happens to be, start building a relationship. This is where we see romance scams coming from. We see a lot of bad actors and cyber criminals who will try and build relationships and take weeks and months to do this in order to carry out their objective in essentially maybe hacking into a bank or whatever it happens to be. So guys, look, this is all about trust. And trust is a funny emotion. It's when you trust something or somebody, you make yourself vulnerable. We often say that the ultimate trust is love, and that makes you the ultimate vulnerable in that situation. That's the reality of it. And there's been studies done on this, guys, where they'll have twins who have the same DNA, but they go to a theme park. One will trust the ride they're going to go on the roller coaster and the other one won't. And so is it nature? Is it nurture? We all have just a different aspect and different ability to trust things, to trust people, to trust systems, to trust websites, to trust brands. And this is the holy grail of it, is being able to establish cyber trust so that people can trust your organization, trust what you're going to do with their data, trust that you will do your best to protect it, and that you're going to be in a position to be cyber resilient and be able to deal with incidents if they do happen, all of those kind of things. So it's all about trust. We get back to this converging of the two worlds, because this is also about the physical security aspects of it. The bad guys don't just operate on the cyber world. They're not just hitting firewalls and trying to get in through that. They'll also physically try and circumvent controls within an organization. One of the ones I've often talked about is when we do these kind of assessments in organizations, that we would look at the building, look at, and we're trying to essentially hack into this organization to tell them how vulnerable they are. And one of the simplest things we've ever done is that we have gone along and we will identify where the employees go for their smoke break. And then we will leave one of these, a USB key, on the ground. And that USB key will simply have the name of the company and the word payroll written on it. And of course, somebody sees this and goes, oh, that's interesting. And they bring it back up to the workstation, they pop it in. There's an auto run script on it. And you're in the system, and that's it. It can ping home, and then you can prove that that was the way you were able to get into their system. No need to take the hard road of trying to get in, stealing laptops, being able to pass yourself off from a social engineering point of view and go into organizations and get into data centers and so on. These are very real kinds of threats, whether it's on the telephone, over email. They're all part of that social engineering tactics of what are used by the bad guys. So what we need are business protection officers. We believe the world needs this within organizations. We need the people who are operating the business. Their primary expertise may be that they're legal, procurement, they may be working in compliance, they may be working in other aspects of the business. They may be middle management, they may be senior management. It doesn't matter. But we need to enable and empower them to be business protection officers to protect the organization against cyber threats. And that's why people getting a qualification, being able to get qualified and experienced and confident around cyber risk is something so important today within organizations, and why so many organizations are looking for it. Now, I mentioned at the start of our little discussion here, a little presentation here, that we saw salaries jump to over $1 million for CISOs and so on. And look, this is supply and demand, guys. It's been around for quite some time. Going back to 2017, I think was the first time that we saw these kind of job offers and things going around at $1 million. And it's not uncommon now for people to work their way up. But what's very interesting to me when you see this is that a lot of the people who make it up into that realm of a seven-figure CISOs, they tend to be people that know the business better than starting off maybe in a cyber world and working their way up, because what they've done is they've augmented their business background and they've obtained the cyber credentials, that they understand cyber risks, they understand the treatment options, they understand how to manage these things, and they've taken that with their knowledge of a particular sector, whether it's retail, whether it's banking, whether it's aviation, whatever it happens to be, and then they have been able to say, well, I understand the business and I understand what the threats are and I understand how to protect it and manage that risk. Therefore, I'm the ideal candidate to be a CISO, as opposed to just bringing in someone who's an expert and saying, "Hey, I'm an expert in cybersecurity, but I know nothing about aviation. I know nothing about retail. And I know nothing about banking or whatever it happens to be." The answers and the gems are within the organizations already, and that's why it's so important that people augment their existing skills and be able to develop that to open up your own personal opportunities within your career and that aspect. So, often talk there, and I dropped the terminology there about a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer. And this is often more than one person, depending on the size and complexity of your organization and the budgets and so on. You may not have a Chief Information Security Officer, but what you may have is a number of different elements or a number of different people that form functions of this. And you can see how varied this is, everything from security operations, risk management, identity management, legal, HR, compliance, security architecture, project delivery, business enablement, and even budgets, financial pieces, all around those. That tends to be the remit or the realm from a holistic point of view, what a CISO is trying to do within an organization. But as I say, in many organizations, part of this will be handled by one person, part will be handled by somebody else or somebody else. But the organization needs all of this to be strategically pulled together. That's where we often see things like, cyber risk officers taking on a role like this to work between the senior leadership team and the business to pull all of this kind of stuff together between multiple entities. And guys, I'll take a moment just to explain a little bit on the differences between CISO levels, because there are lots of different kind of CISOs out there. And when you use the term CISO, Chief Information Security Officer in North America, it means one particular thing. It means somebody who's C-level and responsible for all those areas around cybersecurity. But that term, as you go around the world, tends to mean quite different things. For example, many people in smaller countries and nations, for example, even in Ireland, many people may call themselves a CISO, but they may be just, when I say just, they may be like an IT manager who then call themselves a network manager, and then they decided that they did a quick course or something and decided to call themselves a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. So they're not all the same. And when we look at this and we break this down, we see that there tends to be 4 different levels of CISOs. And I just want to draw your attention here on the left-hand side, guys, because what I'm going to talk about, some of you may, and I know we talked a little bit about the NIST cybersecurity framework within the cybersecurity bootcamp for women. But when you look at this, right, there's 5 functions within the NIST cybersecurity framework. We've got identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Essentially a framework, a way of implementing the right kind of controls and measure them and communicating with management around what you're doing around cybersecurity and risk within your organization. And we see here the different levels. So for example, in level 1, we could say identify, they'd be average. Under protect, they'd be strong, detect, weak, and you can profile it all the way across to level 4. Now, up until this graphic is probably about a year old, and when this was put together, we estimated that there was less than 100 level four CISOs in the world. So that's the people that are making the seven-figure salaries. So it is the top pinnacle, the top of the pyramid, is at that level, right? And then there's more than that. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs out there for people to support the CISO function and the CISO role itself at different levels. And you can even see that we've broken down here, for example, what the organizations look like that hire these kind of CISOs, the kind of competency levels the leadership will have, and so on, and the impact they'll have on the organization, all those kind of things. So look, I'm not going to dwell too much on this because you can play this video back, guys, to your heart's content, and you can go through it and you can get some more detail on that. But I think we've covered that off enough at this stage, especially around compensation. So one of the challenges that all businesses have is now attracting talent. Let's go back to this. I've said there's over 4 million open cybersecurity jobs. That number is probably higher. That's a conservative number. Um, and they're at different levels. I mean, the people at the very bottom who are just being churned out of college with cybersecurity qualifications may find it difficult to get within the industry. But as you've moved up and you've got a career behind you in a particular area, if you've got cybersecurity, that's where all the demand is. It's all middle to top tier is where the demand and the money is all up that end, just to explain where the talent is. And it's very, very difficult. I worked with lots of organizations around the world, and many organizations will struggle for well over a year to try and find, for example, a CISO. And they will have the budgets and they will have the wherewithal and everything else like that, but they just can't find the talent because it's if you have these qualifications, you can pick and choose where you'll work, what you'll work for, and what kind of conditions there are, and everything else. And the world's your oyster because you can choose to live anywhere in the world and operate and do pretty much anything. It's a fantastic, brilliant career to get into. And you don't necessarily need to become a CISO. You may want to become part of the CISO function, CISO office, and be part of that. But enabling and empowering organizations around cyber risk is definitely the way to go, guys. So we talked about COVID. We talked about how things are changing. And I use this quote from Darwin: "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change." And we all need to take stock of things. The world has changed because of COVID, and careers are changing. And it's all pointing towards cybersecurity and cyber risk, guys. This is where, the threats and risks are. This is where the focus needs to go because there's a huge demand. And what we're seeing now, if I was talking to you in a year's time, 2 years' time, those numbers I'm talking about will be a lot higher about, how many open jobs there are, how many demands there are for people. I can tell you now, my finger on the pulse of this industry and working in it for over 30 years, I've never seen such an incredible demand for business people that understand cyber risk. There's no other simpler way of me putting it. Business people that understand cyber risk. That's what they want to get. People that can work within a business and not simply talk about IP addresses, port numbers, locking down vulnerabilities based on patch numbers, all that kind of stuff, and patch IDs and all that. They want people that can actually work with the business and be able to do that. So I believe the answer lies within, and at ICTTF, we firmly believe this. And it's not about, organizations simply relying on external providers to send in cybersecurity experts. Because you think about that for a moment, guys, right? Let's say the leadership in your organization decided that they were worried about cyber risk, and they go, okay, we need to get this fancy pants consultancy firm in. They're going to send in some consultants, and they're going to tell us how things stand at the moment and what we need to do. That's a bit of a flawed concept in some ways, but let me explain what I mean. Those fancy consultants will integrate with you, and they'll start talking to you, and they'll communicate with you. And where they're going to find their answers? Okay, they're going to ask you, the people who work in the organization, how do you do this? How does that operate? Where do you think there's a problem here? What do you think? The answers lie within the organization. So the organization will be far more sensible, far more clever if they simply empower their own people to be able to analyze the status. Of course, by all means, to get a third party opinion on things at the relevant point, but be able to work out the status, where things are, how they're going to be managed on a day-to-day basis, and it not just become a visit to, a health clinic once a week where people just go, yeah, we know we're doing things wrong, but the consultants come in once or twice a year and they tell us that we need to do X, Y, and Z. So it's about, building in that policy, the compliance, that enablement, and enabling your staff and your people to be able to do this as well. So this is one of the main reasons why we developed our initial flagship course, the Certified Cyber Risk Officer course, was to be able to take business people, put them through essentially an 8-week boot camp to be able to say, guys, we are going to take you as business people, whatever level of your experience is, and you don't need any cybersecurity background, and we're going to turn you into business protection officers that can protect that business against cyber threats and be able to develop strategies. So we started off, so I'm going to give you an overview of the 8 modules really, really quickly. I'm not going to take too much time on this, but just to be able to explain how holistic all of this is. So you might go, oh, I'm really interested in module 3, or I'm really interested in that aspect there around that, because we're all different. We're all into different pieces. So we developed it to be a wide syllabus, a wide curriculum in relation to all the different aspects that we go through. And we start off that journey to become a CCRO, a Certified Cyber Risk Officer, by understanding the cyber threat landscape. We then look at how to understand, well, what are the cyber strategy requirements of the organization? We then move on to understanding things like metrics, cyber risk quantification. How do we measure inherent risk, residual risk, maturity? What are the key meaningful metrics for my organization? What should I care about? How do I use these metrics in communicating with the business and leadership and so on? And that leads us nicely into leadership. How is governance, oversight, leadership, and the culture of the organization maintained? We then look at cyber risk and the law. Is your business operating within its compliance and legal constraints? How is that managed? How is that being developed? All of that area. We then look at cyber resilience and incident management. So let me quickly explain that. Attacks will happen. There'll be breaches. There'll be data spills. There'll be all sorts of things. Let's just call them incidents for a moment. It's being able to, can you detect an incident? Can you respond? Can you recover? And what resilience is about is not about saying, hey, we've become the victim of ransomware attack. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut everything down. Zero resilience. Okay? Health sector, Ireland, ransomware attack, zero resilience. Everything was just shut down. Everything. Resilience is about being able to reduce the impact and increase your ability to operate and recover from incidents as it goes on. And that's why cyber resilience, you'll find it on the homepage of the European Central Bank. This is what they talk about within the financial sector. You have to be cyber resilient. And this is a key thing around cyber resilience, which means bringing people together, processes, technology, all of that good stuff. And then we look at third parties and cyber risk, because every business has a business value chain. It has a supply chain. And of course, now we have our remote workers, our remote vendors from all over the world. And how do we manage that risk? How does that risk impact our security rating of our organization and what we're doing? So we look at all of those aspects. And then we put it all together. And we go, okay, you've learned all these things over the last 7 weeks. Now in week 8, let's put it all together. And how would we develop a cyber strategy of your business? Let's look at that, what the cyber strategy would look like, and the whole thing is pieced together. So I'm going to just share with you for a couple of moments just some feedback from some people that may give you some more ideas.
And if I was to say to any other of my board directors or any other board directors who may listen to this, is that it should be the #1 course for all board directors as part of your professional development pathway.
I guess there were so many different aspects of it actually that I was actually genuinely surprised as to how wide the topic was. Also very interesting. Obviously it touched areas around the outsourcing, around cyber strategy. To be honest, all these areas that we've discussed at a board level, but actually now I actually was armed and dangerous in the board meeting. So I was asking probably a lot more questions than they appreciated.
I suppose I've been in adult education for 20 years now, upskilling, doing various levels of courses, doing, I've done degrees, diplomas, kind of other, maybe not non-professional qualified courses, but I have been doing in adult education for 20 years. And this is by far and away the best course I've ever done.
Having completed a master's in cybersecurity in the last couple of years, I built up a lot of theoretical knowledge, and this course was really to fill in some of the practical cyber risk management gaps that I felt I had in my knowledge. The course was really excellent, I have to say, very practical, very relevant, very topical. With great examples, real life examples of issues that are happening today in every entity around the world. So yeah, it was a really useful course, and really thrilled that I did it actually. Well, as I said, I've completed a cybersecurity master's, but a lot of that is theoretical, a lot of discussion points, but this course is very practical. It's really how you can implement a cyber risk management framework in your organization today. So, anyone working in that area, I would suggest, they should be looking to this course because it will help them in their day-to-day job.
And if I was to
So, guys, that's just some feedback from some of the students that have been on the course themselves. And as we said, trust is the sister of security, if you like. It's a human emotion. It makes us vulnerable, but trust is a CCRO core mission. It's about establishing trust in the brand, in your organization, in yourself, in your people, in your staff. That's what it is about, becoming a CCRO and be able to become that business protection officer and establish cyber trust within your organization. So let me move on quickly and just as we get towards the Q&A session, and we can interact a little bit more on that and talk very quickly about how you could become a CCRO and how you could become a cyber leader. Well, firstly, congratulations on completing the Cybersecurity Bootcamp for Women. And we are offering everyone who has completed this course, successfully got a certification, a €1,000 voucher towards the next piece of your education if you're going on that path with us. So if you want to become a CCRO, we're offering you €1,000 today towards that course and that journey, because we really do genuinely, and as you know, and I've shared already with you, the ICTTF is a not-for-profit initiative, and our mission is to be able to take on things like this, and diversity within the cybersecurity industry is something very close to my heart and something that all of us in the team are pushing hard to deal with. So as we sell courses and we bring in revenue, we use that revenue to be able to do things like this and lots of projects like this that we've been done over the years. So let's look how that would look. A course at the moment costs $1,950, and with a voucher, that's going to bring it down to $950 for somebody. And what I can also tell you that for those of you who work for Irish companies, and I know a lot of you here on the call are not based in Ireland, but actually what we've been able to do is work with ICT SkillNet, which is a separate organization, to be able to even bring along another additional grant for those who work for Irish businesses. And most people who work for Irish businesses are eligible for this grant, which would bring the student cost right down to $495. If you're not eligible for that grant, the course would be $950. But that's the breakdown of that. And as you know, Natalia will be able to help you and deal with you and work you through that if you're interested in going forward. But look, guys, this is the perfect time for me to take a little break, because I'm going to introduce you to somebody fantastic, which is Anique O'Brien. And Anique is one of our students, has become a fantastic ambassador for the ICTTF and cybersecurity in general. I'll say lots of nice things, because Anique is now over, and we've never met in the real world, guys. This is the physical world, real world stuff. But me and Anique have become, really good pals and good friends through all of this. And Anique is also one of those people who wants to share and wants to help people understand how they can help defeat cyber threats. So what I'll do, Anique, is I will shut up, which is difficult for me, but I will shut up and let you talk.
Unusual.
There you go. It is unusual. Go for it.
Well, thank you very much. And now I start talking and you have to listen to me. But normally what I do is I would start and I would tell you how great the course is, because it is great and it does benefit. And I would go through the different benefits that I've had from this course. But I wanted to touch on something that Paul has just said right now about us not meeting in the physical world. The cyber criminals don't meet in the physical world either. Cyber attacks don't happen in the physical world. And that's what we've touched on in this course. And that's what you'll learn more about in the CCRO course. The problem and the solution is in cyber. It's in risk and it's in your approach. And not only do you have to have the right approach, which you learn practically speaking on the course, but you have to have the authority and the standing in your organization to do it. And that's hard. That's hard for people who are joining new organizations, who are in different roles, who may not previously have been speaking about risk. But two things will help you get that authority. The first is having a course with a good, well-recognized body, something that organizations can relate to and can have confidence in. And the second is the benefit that you have from that course. And that's speaking with authority, knowing what you're talking about, speaking to things that directly address the business value chain and that will directly help the business, and not just spouting academic information about laws or risk. So that is something you will also get from the CCRO course. I've done the course. It's helped me personally and professionally on a number of ways that I communicate, address, manage, mitigate risk. It's something that I think everybody can benefit from who's interested in risk in their business. And it can be expanded from cyber into how you're looking at other elements of risk in your business. So I think it can be beneficial. You can take it and make it beneficial to your area. And then when you've demonstrated your capacity and your knowledge on how to mitigate risks in your area, the business will naturally come to you looking for more help in more areas. So it's a great stepping stone, and it's a great consolidation if you've already made that step. I'm happy to take any questions. I know this is a course specifically designed for women. I identify as a woman, FYI, and I know that there can be some challenges in the workplace, getting your voice heard, communicating in a way that's effective, breaking down barriers that may exist in certain types of organizations. And I would love to address any of the questions or queries that you have. If you want to shout out now with the question, if you want to pop it into the chat, or indeed send me a message on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about any thoughts you have on this.
I believe our ladies are quiet today. I didn't get any questions on the chat. Girls, if you want to turn on your cameras to interact with Anik and Paul, please join us.
Oh,
seems that Megan
has a question. Hello, Megan.
If you want to turn, I think Megan doesn't have the camera. Oh, no, she has. If you want to turn on your camera and ask directly, that's fine. You just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
hello,
perfectly.
Megan.
Great, thanks. First of all, I want to say to Natalia, to Paul, and to Anik, thank you all for your comments. I've appreciated the course, and I'm completely new to cyber, so it's been really valuable for me. Paul, I wanted to say I also really appreciated in the course the kind of human element that you added in, and the connection to like us as people and the impact of cyber in the real world, because my perception is that oftentimes that link to the human element has been missing, at least for me. So I really appreciate you adding that in. I have two questions, kind of one general and one specific, to Paul and to Anik specifically. When you are just trying to stay abreast of cyber or be part of the larger cyber conversation, what books do you read, or what podcasts do you listen to? What blogs do you like to go to just hear what other people in the community are saying? That's one question. Here's my second question. You made a really compelling argument for learning about cyber risk. And I think that element of my job will come pretty naturally to me based on my previous work experience. But I am on a team of men, and they are wonderfully supportive of me, but they do all have a much more in-depth technical background. And I feel that I lack that. So is there a way you would recommend that I increase my technical knowledge?
Right. I don't mind taking both of those first, Nick, and give a flavor on it, and then pass over to yourself. The first thing, Megan, is thank you for your feedback. It's always great, because that's what I get out of this is feedback as well, which is brilliant, and encourages us to do more things and more initiatives as well as we go. In relation to keeping up with knowledge and blogs and so on, I just have a rule of thumb, is that I can learn from anybody, right? So, and I often go towards things like that, or mistakes, where somebody has done something horribly wrong, and then I'll pull it apart to work out, well, how should that have been done correctly? And that's why a lot of the case studies I use about, wow, look at this, look at a mess they made of this. Now, what are the lessons to be learned here? What could we do on that aspect of it? But the reality is that I probably go through about 3-4 audiobooks a week. Anything with the word cyber, I don't care. I don't look at it. I just buy it, and then I play it, and I listen to it, and I might pick up 1 or 2 things out of it. It's an insatiable knowledge. What I have found over the last probably 4 years, 5 years, I've had to learn about politics. I've had to learn about geopolitics. I couldn't do my job if I didn't now understand about, Democrats, Republicans, Russians, all of these kind of things all over the world, and what that actually means, because the two worlds are completely interconnected. What we see happening in the geopolitical aspect in the physical world I mean, within nanoseconds, impacts the cyber threats we're seeing on that side of things. So it's not just cyber, is probably what I'm trying to say. It's not just cyber knowledge, it's knowledge about people. A lot of books about psychology, a lot of books about understanding, laws and things like that as well. And I have an insatiable thirst for knowledge anyway. So for me, it's just, I love doing it. And then I set myself challenges of being able to present on different material. And if I don't know it, well, then I better learn it pretty quick, right? Because, I need to be an expert on the stuff pretty quickly. So you can put yourself under that kind of pressure to learn things. Now, your second question is brilliant around the technical stuff, because let me tell you, most men are just full of crap, right? On all of this technical bullshit and bravado and machismo, it's all bull, right? Because actually, most things are pretty easy now in the world of cyber. The stuff that's technical and hard and difficult is a finite piece, and it's done within labs. Even the guys who used to be really technical, nerdy engineers kind of stuff, they're just doing basic stuff like patching and following instructions from following things. But most people who act big are insecure. And this is the problem when it comes to the technical piece. And that's why one of the objectives of that CSIRO course was I wanted to make people confident to go and have conversation with technical people, because I have seen technical people coming into boardrooms and say they don't, and you say, well, sorry, you're talking about Stack Overflow, and you're talking about CVE level 500, blah, blah, blah. Do you know the difference between the word risk and threat? And they're stumped. Because the world of acronyms, IT, the world, it's not a proper profession in many ways. And I'm someone who's a technologist and has been in the world of IT for 30 years, but it's not like somebody works their way up to be, the doctor, and then they become a specialist and a consultant and blah, 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 all those things. Anyone can call themselves an IT expert. Anyone can get, these kind of things. So it's still a bit of the Wild West industry. You're as good as what you're able to do. It's a meritocracy. Cybersecurity is a meritocracy. If you can do it, you'll get the pay. No one cares if you've got a purple mohawk or anything else like that. They just will give you the job and say, oh my God, you can actually do this stuff. That's why it's still fantastic and brilliant as an industry to get involved in, because you can make your own path as quickly as you want. It's not about, well, you've only been with the accounting firm for 25 years. You're not ready for partner level. It just doesn't go like that. The people that are also missing in the cybersecurity world are salespeople, communicators. That's one of the biggest money-making roles within the cybersecurity industry, is be able to communicate, be able to talk to people, be able to empathize and have empathy with people, and be able to sell ideas. So there's lots of those areas. So I wouldn't be put down by that. I'd also say, and a hand on heart, and I identify as a man, that women, within the cybersecurity course and CSIRO and all that, and I don't understand why they're just so brilliant at the CSIRO course, but they are. Right. And I think it's because there's many different facets of it, whereas men are not afraid to.
I can give you a list.
Yeah,
Paul.
exactly.
I can give you a list. If you want a list.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you could. But I mean, I think most times men are just bravado, and they just claim they know everything, and they'll talk in acronyms and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying your colleagues are not brilliant. I'm just simply saying that there's that it's only one tiny piece of it. It's a technical element of it. And unless you are a left-hand brain person that loves binary and loves numbers and all of that kind of stuff, then feed the strength, feed the strong muscle as well. If it's creative, if you're a communicator, which you obviously are, and all of those things, then that's what you need to be working on. And don't feel that you have to know everything. I don't know everything. I've been at it 30 years. I'm still learning every week. And in fact, I say another thing, the whole first 10 years of my career was about being the smartest technical guy on the planet. When I was age 18, I went to live in Kazakhstan and set up communication systems for Chevron Oil by the Caspian Sea to San Francisco. And nobody knew Novell Networks like me. What's Novell Networks? Nobody's even heard of it anymore, right? All that knowledge goes stale and disappears. It's gone. And I was, the world's best at that stuff, and it's gone. So technical stuff just goes really quickly, but the other stuff stays with you. And Anik has already, alluded that you can bring it to other facets of the business. So again, I will shut up.
I will just jump in and say, to answer your question, maybe I'll just.
I was just going to say that we need to end. So Anik, if you want to complement the answer or include some
very quickly, I'll say maybe I'll answer the two questions with one. Maybe you don't need to read more about cyber and you don't need to learn tech. Maybe you need to read a book on communication and influence so that you can convince your colleagues that you don't need to learn more about cyber and don't need to learn more about tech.
Brilliant.
Think outside the box.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is brilliant. I mean, because look, Anik is a lawyer, right? And when I was getting her assignments, they were so strong, and it was all about communication. Who is this person? Right?
Couldn't believe I was a lawyer.
And I was going, and then I saw the profile. And I went, there's no way she's a lawyer, right? You know, and the impact of it. I said, right, I need to talk to this person and see what's going on. Because absolutely brilliant at cyber. And being able to communicate that. And you know, one of the reasons I've been successful in my career is I don't just have the knowledge, but I am a good communicator. And if you can communicate, it's a massive strength in this industry. It really, really is. But I know I probably burnt up too much this time, Natalia, because I know you're trying to close things off. But if there's if that's it for questions, we are happy to follow on with questions afterwards, guys. And you know, so if you want to send them to Anik directly on LinkedIn, or you can send them into us here at ICTTF, and we're more than happy to help you with your career. And if you like, you know, as your career develops as well, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're here to help people. We have a very, very clear mission on what we're trying to do, especially around getting women into cybersecurity. And hopefully we've helped you on your first steps.
Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, most of you have my mail. Just send to me or reach out to Anik or Paul through LinkedIn. And anything you need, you also have the support at icttf.org. Don't hesitate to contact us or use the feed on the community to talk to each other. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. I hope everyone in Ireland is enjoying the summer. I don't know about the weather in the other countries, but a lovely day for everyone. And we keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Anik. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.